Are there passages in the Upanishads that give us this clue to multiple adapters? There are many passages. We can take, for example, one passage that we have in the chapter that we're currently studying every Tuesday. We're studying the Bhagavad Gita. When we talk at Vedanta, we have to understand three key scriptural texts are there. We have to understand the Upanishads is the key text. This represents Shruti for us. That is the thing that is heard. Not just heard with the ear, but heard with the inner ear. The ear and eye of intuition. Then, of course, as time goes on, these Upanishads become more and more abstract to the human person. And the saints and sages introduce these ideas in schools. Not the kind of schools that we have learning about geography and all these things. These kind of schools are centered primarily on a higher knowledge. Then, because these are dialogues comprising concepts very subtle to understand, what becomes of those people over time who can't understand that or don't have access to it? So you find Lord Krishna, some 5,000 years ago, puts this in a wonderful context for us, compiles it in such a way for ease of understanding. This is called the Bhagavad Gita, a kind of summary of the epic Mahabharata. Now, if we study that stanza by stanza, we find it is also a poem. The largest philosophical poem in the world. And when you study that, some people today, in 2020, scratch their heads and says, oh, it's too abstract for me. And that's why we have classes to explain. But you'll see the number of people interested in this very few. Not understanding the practical implementation of this and implication of this. So we find what is the practical application of understanding these upadis. 13th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, very, very beautiful, beautiful stanza. And it comes out like this. Sarvata panipadam tat sarvato kshikshiro mukham. With hands and feet everywhere. Just imagine now. These are the adapters. That same entity has hands and feet everywhere. Eyes, heads, and mouths everywhere. Never mind what those mouths are saying. With ears everywhere. It exists. And here's a wonderful thing, pervading all. So when we use the analogy of an electrical current, we can easily see how electrical current is pervading everywhere. It's in an electromagnetic field that we can't catch with the eyes or the ears, only when we put an adapter to it. And when you remove all the adapters, what do you have? The thing that is existing, the self that is existing. So when the mind is tuned properly and is purified nicely, then what will it do? It'll make sure that all the things that are seen properly are registered in the proper way. And then when we remove, even mentally, all these adapters completely, we see that one whose hands and eyes are everywhere. So it's a wonderful passage. With hands and feet everywhere, with eyes, heads, and mouths everywhere, it exists, pervading all. Of course, we can't trust the Bhagavad Gita unless and until it corresponds with the Upanishads. So there's also a wonderful passage that we can find in the Upanishads. And here, for those who want to trace the references, you go to the Svetashvatara Upanishad, and we're taking the section 3 and 14. You see, if you're a serious student, you try and trace these passages, and that's why I'm giving you some reference to it. But here we find a reference, a whole section in this, which is really to do with a cosmic person. We can imagine that the Lord of the universe is a cosmic entity. And just as we have a mind and we have limbs and we have all these faculties, which now we're labeling as adapters, we can also see this universally. Sun is an adapter, moon is an adapter, stars are an adapter. And so it goes on to say, he who is in the faces, heads, and necks of all, who dwells in the cave of the heart of all beings, who is all-pervading, he is the Lord and therefore omnipresent. And the particular form they're referring to, really, is Shiva. When they refer and bring this philosophy down to a personal entity, they're calling it Shiva. Shiva just means an entity that is auspicious. When we discover this, things become auspicious to us. What that means is thought is a suction. That all these scenes containing people and role players, all with multiple adapters, one entity with all these multiple adapters. When we see that, you see in its proper context, what do we really see? Revised position, Lord of the universe, you're there with hands and eyes and limbs everywhere. Not only that, but pervading all of them. And then also playfully playing the role, using these adapters. And when through purification of the mind, all these adapters are removed, eyes are gone, ears are gone, everything is gone, what remains is that existent entity. Revealed by itself, nothing more to do. And so the 14th stanza is the concluding one in reference to this subject, not the concluding one in the overall reference. So Sahasra Shirsha Purashaha Sahasrakshaha Sahasra Pat Sabhumim Vishwato Vritva Patyatishad the Shangolam. Beautiful passage. The person, what? Which person? Cosmic person has 1,000 heads, not literally counting. 1,000 in the context means unlimited, infinite, infinite. 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet. And then he surrounds the earth on all sides and stands 10 fingers breadth beyond. 10 fingers breadth means endless, shoreless. Everything was counted in decimalization, decimal forms of there. But when you say 10, you say 10 holding these digits and beyond. So 10 digits says you can't go anything beyond 10. And any figure you come up with will be a multiple of 10, even 1,000 is a multiple of 10. So it's endless. Though the Supreme manifests himself in the cosmos, he also transcends it. The transcendent aspect we get when all these upadhis are gone. So these are wonderful passages and brings us a practical application really to what we are studying, to this subject of Vedanta. So the first realization is that all the bodies that are found in front are serving as adapters, multiple adapters. We can break it down into individual adapters, eyes, ears, and so on. And so there's a compound there. But if you use the analogy of electricity, when the bulb is missing, the electricity is still there. When you put the adapter back, the light is there. So when the current is there, any one of the adapters will function. Or if all are put, then all of them will function. So God's presence really is detected in all the heads and hands and eyes. It's become common practice for those who somehow suggest that there's no existence. And the Bhagavad Gita tells us, eschewing this company, the Katha Upanishad tells us, eschewing the company of these people who do not believe in existence. But that would be an absurd position. How, the old question, how do you get something that is existence from non-existence? How do you get being from non-being? See, how do you get this theological difficulty is there, even amongst, you see, theologians who have ex nihilo from nothing. Modern science also suggests ex nihilo, from nothing. You get something from nothing. But a small child of 5 will laugh at you. They know the absurdity of it. How will you get something from nothing? Something must be there. When you talk of evolution, the evolution is unfolding something that is already there. It's not that it's absent. So even in modern science, when you have a reductionist materialist point of view and suggest, or leave the question blank, not attend to it. Well, is there something that is existent? No, we won't attend to that. We'll just say random chance has made it. What are you, this glorious entity called you, with the power of speech and thinking, and never mind how usefully or uselessly you use it, this capacity. That's a different question. But what is this entity then? Well, it just came about by some cosmic roulette wheel. And who's spinning it? Don't ask that question. So some kind of random combination comes and results in you, a thinking, valuing person, capable of expressing art and culture and appreciation of it, and asking the questions, profound questions about the universe, trying to analyze it even a scientific way to find out how things work, like finding out how a clock works and why is it there. Now, the why is it there is beginning to be asked. And you can't really have any starting point if you say, we are starting from a non-existent point. So the way out would be to say that there's something that always existed. Yes, we agree with it. But what's the nature of that? It has to express itself through the most refined adapters that we have. And the most refined adapter that we have is human mind. And that human mind, when properly refined, properly made pure, will reveal this self that is within, that religion has decided to call God. God, by the way, a lot of people have a reluctance about using this term God. We can use it for convenience sake, because people say, oh, it comes with a lot of baggage. Is it an extra cosmic entity outside of creation that created the universe and possibly went away on holiday thereafter? Because there's a lot of problems in it. So, but the English word God comes from the Germanic hut, G-U-D, and hut means something worthy of being offered to, because it comes from the Sanskrit hutam. Hutam, the thing that is worthy of offering to. So no matter how you trace it, we come back to Indic concepts, Sanskrit concepts, Sanskrit language. So when the self is devoid of all of these adapters, we only see then the one entity that exists, and that's where we should be headed. When you see somebody who you think is being awkward and is aiming at you personally, 2 problems are there. You didn't see yourself as a multi-purpose adapter with a fundamental self, number 1. And number 2, you didn't see the other person in this way either. There's no lines being drawn. You just have to revalue it. So a fundamental shift has to be there. These passages have to be understood properly, you see, and reflected on and meditated on. And they're very valuable because they give us an explanation found now, you can see, in at least 2 places. And if you look at the Rig Veda also, you'll find identical passages too, even in non-Upanishadic places. So this wonderful passage, that infinite being has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet, enveloping the universe on all sides, exists beyond the span of what we can mathematically know. A wonderful passage. So all that you call social service actually is done with this in mind. Why did Swami Vivekananda now introduce hospitals and schools and colleges and social service? Is only because we have to get used to God in this form. And getting used to God in this form, serving God in this form, it leads us to an understanding that when you strip all the adapters away, Lord, you alone are there. Nothing else is there. So you can see how useful these questions are, actually, and how useful the answers can be. I'm not saying my answers are useful, but my answer is just the Upanishads. That's all. I have nothing of my own. I'm just a bookworm. You see, if we see that the Lord is a ruler of all, put the Lord in that context, in a universal context, then that Lord also becomes a refuge of all, a friend of all. So that when we see any human being or any animal, you know, in Italy and Spain, where the death rate from the COVID virus is very high, we see them in a statistical way. But a compassionate way would be to question, so what about their surviving families? And we don't know whether they were classically good people or not. We don't know if they were scandal mongers or not. But we know that they had the equipment for revelation. And when you take the equipment away, only God stands there. See, when you don't see that, then you'll have great anxiety beyond the idea of the difficulties that the families may be having because of bereavements. And we just generally put it into a category, a pigeonhole, to say, what a misfortune. But we don't think it's a misfortune. Many people not understanding this properly will say, oh, you have a callous attitude. You don't really consider that death is a misfortune. No, death is not a misfortune. A misfortune is the attachment from the surviving people who are now suffering. That's a misfortune. But it's not a misfortune, it's a fact. When we see the multiple adapters, we can put them into categories. Categories are general scenes in front of us, which we call fields. The external field, the outer field, is dependent on the sense organs. And when we bypass the instruments, we bypass their outer representations also. You have to learn the art of bypassing the organs themselves and seeing only that oneness. Then the external expressions are also bypassed. That means that we don't become affected in the same way. It means that we have a truly philosophical attitude. And philosophical doesn't mean heartless. It simply means that we have, in fact, our compassion increases because we see all those people who are suffering. And if it wasn't like that, of course, then all these great teachers, all these great saints and sages would do nothing. They would sit selfishly, and of course there have been people like that in the beginning of spiritual life, selfishly, and say, well, let me look after my own spiritual life. You take the very motto of the Ramakrishna Mott and Mission, you see it's not like that at all. The very motto would be telling us, for my own spiritual development, if you translate it, and the good of all the world. Both are necessary. So Swami Vivekananda, understanding this, says this practical, non-dualistic philosophy is expressed in service, seeing that God in all, seeing that self in all, and understanding we can only appreciate its presence by looking at the multiple adapters which are there, that we call hands and eyes and so on and so forth. And we can also put these into personality types and all the rest of it, make all these various sections and subsections. So we can shift our thinking, is a valuable way of looking at things. Oh, you glorious multiple adapter personality, designed to have a revelation of this one supreme entity. What a glory. Repeat that. Don't say what a pity. Take that off. Hey, what a glory. It's a positive way of thinking. And when we think in this way, what happens here in this individual multi-purpose adapter called me? Well, that also gets a thrill. It also becomes a more efficient machine. It also becomes something that we can use more effectively because every single one of 60, 70 trillion cells will thrill with it. See, we gave a kind of relaxation yesterday at the yoga. And of course, Pada will be also very, the various people who study, for example, who study a technique very often used in the yoga exercise. So we did it yesterday. But when you really refine it, it becomes part of a technique of withdrawing from the external to the internal. And that's not entirely withdrawal. It's not entirely negative because the positive is expressed. Is expressed that when you do that, then you'll see, having gone to the base, blissful base we might call it, we can find an outward movement. So we find a glory moving outward, expressing itself. And so that is why, in a kind of revolutionary way, if I were to rewrite these commentaries on these Upanishads and take this term, Upardi, I would turn it around and I would say, no, why don't we say manifesting adapter? Yes, it's limiting. It seems to limit the electrical current, seems to restrict it, seems to put it in such a way that we don't notice it. But when we say it's a manifesting adapter, it gives us a whole brand new concept. It's a much better way of looking at it. Can you give me evidence for God? Yes, look at all the adapters and then trace it back and find out what's the current that makes it happen. All right. One question dealt with. Any more questions? See, Ramakrishna gives us a funny example about this. He gives us an example of a man holding a lantern, lighting other people. Of course, it's the 19th century, so he's using a lantern. Nowadays, we can update it in any other way. If you want to see him, however, that is the person holding the lantern, obscuring his own face. Then you must ask him, please turn the lantern on yourself so we can see you. And so when he turns the lantern on his own face, see, unless he chooses to reveal himself, to turn the light on himself, you won't see him. And in the Gita chapter that we are studying, this astounding statement also comes. See, all these different combinations and assemblages of these adapters we call fields. And so the technical term is used in this chapter, the field and the knower of the fields. Now we could easily think that each field has a different knower. Each field has a different operator. Like saying every broadcast that you receive at your radio station or television station is individually delivered to you. No, it's not. So if you want to tune into the BBC, something like that, you don't have to ask for an import license. You don't have to make a request by email, please send me your broadcast. If possible, send it urgently by DHL. That doesn't happen. The broadcast being there, being readily available for everyone, you simply tune into it. So there's one knower in all the fields. There's an astonishing statement that is made. An outstanding statement. Krishna representing this omnipresent entity that is always there, this existent entity, followed naturally by realization. Realization comes because a revelation comes by itself. Once this multi-adapter instrument, this apparatus, is nicely cleaned and tuned, once we decide that we'll take our attention and shift it in a different direction. And once we do that, then we realize that this whole, all these fields has only one knower. In all the fields, there's only one perceiver. See, the cat looks at me, and I look at the cat. The cat looks at me. The seer, when the cat looks at me, is God. That we have to understand and recognize. And then you may say, but a cat is pretty innocent. Well, I think a cat is quite cunning. A cat's job is just to sit and look at you and then push its fur against you. And then your response is, you fall right into its trap. Your response is to stroke it. What we really know is that the cat has certain chemicals on the fur, and by rubbing against you is claiming you for your own. Whatever it is, this is my leg. So in a daily life, when I see this leg of yours, I'll rub against it and reinforce the scent that I put on it. And in turn, you owe me a stroking. And even when you stroke the cat, you're putting the chemicals on the skin. In this way, the cat makes friends and creates an era of security around itself, an atmosphere of security. But when the cat looks at me, what should I think? Lord, you are there. In the cat's eyes, you are looking at me. And you may say, as I say, the cat is innocent, but we've found out, no, there's method in the madness also. There's a reason why the cat is friendly with you. But a human being, can they be as innocent as that? Or are they calculating? Will I feel a victim when I interact with them? The fault will be mine. The same God that is in the cat, the same knower in that field, is a knower in all the fields. The wonderful statement, I am the knower in all those fields. 13th chapter, Bhagavad Gita. There's a deity inside, a divine principle inside you. See, because we are attached to the objects through the eyes begin to catch colors and so on. And then we are attached to the ear because the ear catches sounds. We get an attachment to what we see and what we hear. But there must be an entity that does that. You know, if we jump to the Kena Upanishad and how it states, I am the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind. Beautiful, beautiful statements coming out from the Upanishads. So these are all worth studying. Ask me another question. Shankaracharya's commentary on that particular passage is also very interesting and profound. So what he says is, the self-conscious principle living behind the sense organs, that is what is meant by kshetrajna, knower of a field. And he says it's so called because of the upardi, limiting adjunct or manifesting adapter, of kshetra, the field. Field itself is the adapter. And this kshetra or field is of various forms. And he mentions hands, feet, etc., etc., though all the variety is but illusory. Illusory means because when all those adapters go, all the objects also go. The field itself disappears. The eyes can see colors, the nose can smell, but the perceiver is one. He coordinates everything. It should be known as devoid of all variety. And all variety caused in kshetrajna, that is the knower, by the variety in the upadis. That's where the variety is. And these bodies belong to a field, a category called field. What kind of categories are there? We look in front, there's the field presented by the sense organs, which is multiple in its nature and varied. But what catches it? The sense organs catch it. But there's some entity that can look and see the variety of the sense organs and their experiences, and also notice their condition. The condition is not stable. Sometimes they are fresh and alert. They're all subject to what we call gunas. And these gunas create this variety in the mind of condition. So when we look at the world outside, we see, okay, the conditions outside are also varied, sometimes favorable, sometimes not. Maybe we deem this COVID-19 virus as unfavorable, only because we bypass the understanding, we bypass the things which are favorable. When you look at all the COVID-19 statistics, did you look at how many people recovered? The greater number of people recovered than did not recover. But we tend to look at that one thing and then say, poor me, I am a victim of this. Look at the wonderful environmental impact, by the way, this is having. I haven't checked, but the last time I was in Delhi, the quality of the air was hazardous. And you could feel it. You felt you didn't really even want to breathe. So I haven't checked the air quality, but I hazard a guess that it has improved considerably. It has stripped away all the traffic, most of the traffic, or at least a great proportion of the traffic from the cities. Now, when we get back into a so-called normal situation, will we learn a lesson from it? Or will we get back into the old habit? So these things are deemed by us to be either positive or negative, good or bad, valued in different ways. But you see, it's all subject to a variety, threefold variety only. This is why when we study the subject of Vedanta, we have to study this nature and put the functional effects in the field that come from these three evolutionary forces that we have called gunas. This is sattva, rajas, and tamas. They can act like a gear stick, so that when we stand back, even from the multiple fields, we can see that the seer of the fields has the capacity to make a movement that can change it. And it's equivalent to shifting the gears. Sattva, rajas, tamas, tamas being the lowest gear. And tamas being the lowest gear is the one that gives us the most difficulty and most ignorance. And also the most pain. Shifting it to another gear is better, but also will give us pain. We have to learn to take the opportunity and shift the gear a little higher and make everything pure and full and free. We have the choice to change our thinking. And when we do that, thought itself being a suction, we will attract good things toward us. Even somebody who had a bad attitude toward us or a controlling aspect that we don't like. Even quietly dealing with it and shifting our attention and revaluing the whole thing, what we'll see is the behavior of this person will start to shift and change. Nothing that we did. All we, except shift our attitude, have a different perspective of it. Because when you say, where do we draw the line with somebody else's behavior, it's intrinsically an egoistic statement. Where do we draw the line in terms of how we feel about their behavior? The egocentric position. Disguised. You say, what a pity, this person is being awkward. I have to form a relationship with them. Where do I draw the line? No line necessary. Remove the line itself. Lord of the universe standing there. Does that mean we are not pragmatic about it? No, we understand, recognize the field for itself, but it becomes irrelevant because what's beyond that is that unity of existence that stands there. It doesn't have to be acquired, it's already existing. So the Upanishads have this, that what we are so-called looking for is already existing, and we don't start from an absence, we don't start from a blank, we don't start from a deficiency. We start from a position of fullness, freedom, and existent, already existent now. It being existent, can I notice it? Next step. We have to take this up in a delightful spirit. You have to be enthusiastic about it, not as an arduous task or anything like that, or there's a sense of self-recrimination. Oh, I never looked at that. So what a pity. My life is wasted. No, none of that. Because existent means existent now, noticing it now. Like the example of Ramakrishna of turning the lantern on yourself to see your own scene, your own face. Take the lantern and inquire from everybody else. Where am I? Where am I? Who am I? Who am I? Then a wise person might say, my dear person, why don't you turn the lantern on yourself? Then it can be seen. So having this capacity to turn the lantern on ourselves, we realize, well, I'm the only existent one which was there. My mistake was to see all these names and shapes and forms and functions and behaviors as something separate from me. This is not the case. Then if you look at it in this way, you become yourself a manifesting adapter of God's glory everywhere. You yourself become a manifester of truth and goodness and love and harmony everywhere. You have a spirit of generosity. You make this ego that was restricting you seemingly, you make it an open channel for grace to spread everywhere and make its reformation. Why don't you do that? A generosity of spirit toward everybody, equally present everywhere. So I'm looking at the clock now. It's 3 minutes past 12. So almost 1 hour we've been together with each other. And I think we said this is going on till 12:30 because normally you see when people are here, we go on like this and other questions also arise. And we find ourselves, 12:30 suddenly arrived. Mm-hmm. The person who knows this best is Georgiana, probably, because she and Deepak are normally here. And John Cunningham is also normally here. I don't think he joined us today. Seems like he didn't. And I wonder, Supta, if John Cunningham is on our chat list. Very often if we don't get a response
Swamiji, no, Swamiji, he is there.
Oh, he is there. That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. And we have somebody I'm looking at from France. That's good. So Padma is there. See, Padma is part of a group. Is your friend here also?
Yes, she is.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
So they're part of a group. Some of them are involved in what is called Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra is an elaboration of, you see, because Nidra is intrinsically an eliminating process. Nidra means sleep. So do yogis sleep in a different way? Do they sleep on their side or their back? Or what? Is it a different way that they sleep? How can we describe it as yoga nidra? What distinguishes it? You know, all these yogis are different. But if you take it on the surface, people will say, oh, maybe yogis sit on a bed of nails, or maybe yogis sleep sitting, or maybe they hang from a tree, or stand on their head. Definitely they don't stand on somebody else's head. We know that much. So this yoga nidra, what is the difference? What is this yoga sleep? And then we have to go back to what we mean by yoga, a condition of being united. And there are mythological examples for it. So we find Vishnu, for example, sleeping on Ananta, the serpent. Ananta itself represents a cosmic ocean, infinite ocean of existence that never ends. And then what is that sleep comprising? It's comprising a withdrawal of all the senses from their objects. Now we experience this every night also. We also go into this nidra and yoga nidra actually every night. Because one of the adapters I mentioned would be the ego, a coordinating entity that observes and is able to relate to all the fields in front of it. Mental field, even the intellect field, even the field of the mind and the senses, and the field of the sense objects in front. A kind of coordinating identity. But you see, in sleep, that is dream sleep, we find that this ego doesn't take a passport and cross over there. We find there we have so many multiple egos there. And so who observes this ego is a question. And so it is this ego which is observed by some entity. And then when we relieve it of its duty, when all that dream disappears, and we find both types of ego go, the dream ego goes and the waking ego goes, we are left with an egoless experience, still an experience. And so we are not conscious of it at that moment in time. We're conscious of it as an after experience. Of course, consciousness is there. For us to be able to record it, consciousness would have to be there. Now, when we take another kind of dimension on it, when we now put ourselves in a position of observer. And by the way, normally I would illustrate this on a whiteboard. So the next time we meet, I might either put a whiteboard here where Sister Nivedita stands, or I might go to the library section. The only thing is I wasn't sure how strong the internet connection was in the library section. For that reason, I kept it here. But we can test it out. And if it's strong enough there, because there's a booster there, then internet booster, then I can maneuver this laptop in such a way that you can see all this on the whiteboard.
Swamiji, I think there is a whiteboard feature on Zoom also. You can use that.
Oh yes, I have to discover that. But rather than to disrupt all this, I'll discover it. I think you have to be experienced in being able to draw in such a way that it doesn't look like it doesn't look like string gone wild, you know. So I have to see what that looks like. Well, the next time I can do it. Actually, that's a very good idea. We can use that. Every night we have a dress rehearsal for death. Every night we go into this blank state, but something observes it. And that would be ordinary sleep, not yoga sleep. Yogic sleep would be now being intricately aware of this. And it equates really to the state of mind which we call pratyahara. That is still remaining alert, not remaining blank. Blankness will be tamas. Tamas or darkness or blankness or ignorance rules during dreamless sleep. And then that evolves, as it were, to a more active state. We can say a dream state is characterized by rajas. And we can say that a waking state, while all these components will be there with us, gives us the opportunity to make our world entirely sattvic. So this is why this evolutionary process of consciousness is there for us. So now, when we create this alertness, what will we find? We'll come to this position where we are aware of this unity of existence that can operate now in a positive way through all these various adapters. And then, of course, we find this has a positive effect on us and the world around us. If we think that somebody is being negative to us, we are stating some negative script. We're formulating a negative script. Can you see the trap? It's a very subtle trap. In the name of justice, in the name of making the world a better place, we decide to be critical, ultra critical of it. Let this world be a better place. On what basis? Let people be better. On what basis? On the basis that I am fine. Who said you are fine? If you're fine, then end of story. Cul-de-sac. Finished. You're fine, no more. Put a full stop there and leave it. No more scripture. I'm happy that you're ignorant. Otherwise, I can't see you and have this dialogue with you. You see the benefits of ignorance. Anyhow, it's all right. Okay, ask another question. If there are no other questions, we'll leave it there.
Swamiji, during this time of lockdown, how is it possible to combine action and, well, in inaction, or not to be in tamas?
Right.
Not to...
Okay, it's a good question. So you see, I assume that we still have to wake up, we still have to eat, we still have to sleep. And for many, we still have to work also. For most people, it's like that. So the example I can give you is from these various broadcasts. We weren't doing these Zoom broadcasts previously. We weren't doing YouTube. Of course, it was on YouTube, but the YouTube was there 3 times a week and was never live. So all of these things have given us the opportunity to do something extra. And prior to this, and I have to, Supta, I don't know if you want me to mention a name, whether you do or not, I'll do it. But you see, she said, can we not have some daily thought? I said, yes, of course we can. So from there, we then I started issuing daily thoughts.
Which was fantastic, which is fantastic.
And even that developed because, you see, I started off with some pithy thoughts. And then on one occasion, I put it in, my poetic spirit took over. So we put that poetry out. And now, of course, I'm stuck with every issue has to be a poem. But that's okay. After 365 days, we'll combine these poems and prayers and put them with an appropriate picture, and maybe we have some use to somebody. So the point is, a routine has to be established. Activity has to continue in the same way as if there were no lockdown. That means we have to keep a diary. We have to keep a schedule. We have to wake up at the same time. We have to hold conferences at the same time. We have to schedule our work at the same time. We have to eat at the same time. We have to meditate at the same time, with no exceptions. And this now lockdown gives us the opportunity to more regularize our life. And the temptation, of course, is to make things loose. And making things loose will make things lazy. And things lazy are dominated by tamas. So we have to use this time usefully, much more usefully. We have to be much more organized than we ever were. And when we look what is yoga, we find again this reference in the Bhagavad Gita. So we find in the 2nd chapter already, we are told the definition of yoga. There are 2 definitions that come out from it. One is that it has to be skilled action, skill in action. Everything that we do will have to be entirely skilled. That is efficient. And how do we do that? we have to be efficient with our time. We only have one resource, and that is time. And time, if we are efficient in this way, why is this a yoga? One of the reasons would be it assists our concentration. All yoga in practice is an exercise in concentration. Why we don't notice this existent entity that religion calls God and philosophy calls self is because our attention is tuned elsewhere, not to this currently existent entity here and now. And so we have to put that into the time, and we have to be karma yogis. And the fact that we are confined karma yogis should not go against it. So we should have a skill of concentration that starts off with organizing our time properly and making sure that we have a tighter time schedule at home than we have anywhere else. Another thing is these kinds of communications, you see, because not only can laziness come in, but despondency can also come in. A sense of loneliness can also come in if we're not careful. And so it's good to maintain social contact. So this is social contact here. And if it wasn't for this social contact, and I'm counting out, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 participants here. And normally 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, we have 3 participants. I wish there were more, but 3 participants. So it gives us this opportunity as well. There's no substitute, by the way, for those people living in Dublin, the Dublin area, in normal circumstances, not to come at 11 o'clock. But even if you don't come every day, at least you can come once a month. At least you can come once every 2 months, because it's not just the dissemination of information. This is the second best, of course, but it's to take advantage of the environment, is to take advantage of the holy place and holy company that is here. And this is highly beneficial to you and your families. If this is not properly understood, you may say, as happened previously, there was one devotee who gave the impression, oh, since all these talks and so on and so forth are happening by YouTube, we can put our feet up and watch television with a cup of coffee or something, or a cup of hot chocolate or something, and probably go to sleep, actually. Not getting the idea that the environment itself is sacred. This is why we have churches and temples and ashrams, to go and look and bathe in the holy place which is there. That's hugely important, because whoever's there, the place itself is there. You see, the pictures are here. Wonderful pictures are here. They are not mere pictures in our view. These are imbued with divinity, is our understanding of it. So to get the darshan, as we call it, to get the sight, the blessed sight, is very, very important. So to be organized, to make sure that everything is tightly scheduled, to make sure that there's good social interaction, so that we can be inter-supportive with each other everywhere. These are very important things. And you'll see that I counted the participants, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But there was a 10th person. The 10th person was Georgiana. And I don't know if Deepak is on. Anyhow, so one of them would be Georgiana, and she is just walking through the door now. So you'll see she's left, and she's now walking through the door now. And of course, she's here not just to see us, she's here to give us food also. The wonderful service that devotees give to us here is sadhu seva, that we don't have to cook anything. We just sit back and enjoy the food that God supplies. wherever you are, even if you're by yourself, even if you're stuck in a cave, you still have to live with yourself. You still have to live with the mind. And so wherever you are, whether it's out and about, whether it's working in an office or staying at home and doing your work from here, you still are with yourself. And so it's the spiritual life is a psychological life. It's a question of taking the propensity of the mind in these three varieties of sattva, rajas, and tamas, and systematically elevating it at every opportunity to the highest position. That's necessary. I have great admiration for those people who are joining us from France, because at moments I tend to talk quite quickly, and then I realize, oh, an internal translation has to happen in them. So I hope that's
it's fine, it's perfect.
All right, that's fine, all good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Very nice to see you. And my ticket was cancelled, actually. Well, I had the option to take a voucher from the airline or to rebook to a different place. I took the option of a voucher at the time, not knowing when I would be there. But I suspect that, I don't know if flights are still going to France at the moment. Even in the early days, I had the idea, it doesn't matter, I'll go anyway. But then maybe that wasn't the wisest thing to do. So what we'll do, we'll conclude now. It's now 22 minutes past 12 here anyway. And it's the people in France must be suffering from a stomach complaint. The stomach adapter might be saying, please feed me, please feed me. So if that's the case, that's all right. We'll release you. And we'll keep in touch. We'll make these regular meetings on Sundays. The yoga we'll make regular also on Saturdays by Zoom. And then, of course, just to remind you that this evening, live, is the normal Sunday evening talk or presentation on Gospel of Ramakrishna by Swami Vimokshananda, who has gathered friends from all over the world to join us. This is a great advantage of doing these kinds of things. And then what is next? So today's Sunday. Next is Tuesday. We have the Srimad Bhagavad Gita live broadcast. And that is at 8 o'clock Irish time. So 9 o'clock continental time, where we'll explore more of the Bhagavad Gita.
Swamiji, can we have a guided meditation live on Tuesday?
Yes. We did it last Tuesday, I think. But we can do
No, we did not. No, it was YouTube, not Zoom. We have not done it through
on Zoom. Oh, you want it on Zoom?
Yeah.
Yes, we can do it on Zoom if you like. What would be the benefit of having it on Zoom? No, we can have it on Zoom if that's the request.
Yeah, we can see people joining in. Otherwise, YouTube, it becomes one-sided. So
yeah,
that'll be, you can see all of them doing meditate.
All right, okay. If that's the case, then what we'll do is we'll have it on Zoom. And it strikes me that maybe we're not broadcasting as wide a range as we possibly can. So we have to advertise it on my Facebook page, EVS Facebook page, and all the rest of it. These are the practical things. And then make reference to it on Twitter.
Yes.
And make reference to it through the mail equivalent of Monkey Mind called MailChimp, I think.
Yes. Like the Holy Mother yesterday we had advertised in Facebook.
Yes.
That gave a good response.
Yes. So these have to happen. All good. I never watch any of these broadcasts to do with me. It makes me too nervous to do that. But anyway, if other people enjoy, that's fine. All right, we will finish off then with just a peace prayer, simple as this: Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. And let us mentally radiate this peace to all those throughout the world who are principally suffering from anxiety. May they attain peace of mind. May they be healthy and free and pure. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good. I have to figure out how to end this or end meeting. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.